Stop. I can't take it anymore.
Oh, I do the live ones too. Yes, I know. I saw your act in the theater. You're really quite good.
Quite a certain harmful habit.
Stop it now, I'm eating.
Hello and welcome back. We are breaking up with RBS. This is episode number 37, and I am Tawny Santabria.
And I am JDK Whittakin. We are here once again to debunk the junk.
I never get tired of it.
No, because it's kind of a constant thing. It's practice, right? You got to keep
We just
cleaning
keep
things up.
practicing it.
Keep going. Keep going. So thanks to all of you for joining us. If you're listening live, thank you so much for doing so. If you're listening as a podcast, thank you so much for doing that and for subscribing and leaving comments for us. And if you're watching on our YouTube channel, here we are. So again, thanks for doing that. And also we have a Facebook group that you can join if you'd like information and different things between episodes, breaking up with RBS. We're all over the place.
Yeah, we are all over the place.
Yeah, and also you got your 6 week self-mastery course that's out there.
I
still.
do. So
People taking advantage of that?
They are. So if anybody wants to learn a little bit more about all the things that we talk about every week, that's a great place where you can learn and practice.
Experience it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. How was your week?
My week was a blur, as it always is.
Yeah, well, sure seems
So
like
that question is always difficult.
Maybe I should
answer.
ask you a different one at the beginning of each week. Maybe next time I'll just ask, what'd you have for dinner last night?
That would probably be easier.
So what did you have for dinner last
night? I had some tri-tip that I smoked.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I've been really getting into the smoking of meat on my Traeger.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Not sponsored.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. Maybe we should reach out to them.
Maybe we should, because I'm really getting into it.
Yeah. We could probably sell them on breaking up with RBS.
Why not?
Right. Anyway, well, for me, speaking of, last night, it was actually the other night. I watched a movie that I've been meaning to watch forever. And I wanted to put it in front of you and see what comes up. And I'm really just kind of pulling this together. But have you seen It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Tawny?
It was the last movie I saw before lockdown.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you remember
in the theaters?
Yes. Okay.
In the theaters.
Okay. Yeah. For those of you who haven't seen it, it stars Tom Hanks as Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually not the main actor in it, though. It's a story about somebody else. But I watched that just the other night in kind of I would describe myself as kind of in an emotionally heavy place. I wouldn't say I was down. I was just feeling full. And I was scanning through the movie options that I could have, had some time, and I figured I would know the right one when I saw it. And I saw it come up and I went, oh, I've been meaning to watch that. It's been out for a few years now. And I watched it, and well, within a few minutes, I was really connecting with it. And it kind of brought up a lot for me of what we talk about a lot. Fred Rogers strikes me as one of the most present people maybe a lot of us have maybe ever been introduced to. Present in the moment. And his show was about helping kids recognize their emotions and do something positive with them. And he would talk about a lot of tough stuff, war and divorce and loneliness. I mean, so he wasn't just doing, simple stuff, but, and he was really present. There's several scenes where it's all about presence. He tells the main character at one point, the most important thing in my life right now is having this conversation with you. There's another scene with a kid that this kid is just armed, to not connect with him, even though he's excited. And he just, by being present with this kid, slowly over time, the kid connects. So you've seen it. Did any of this come up for you when you saw it? Was there, what comes up for you with me mentioning that? By the way, it's brilliant. Everybody should watch it.
It is so good, and I didn't just see it. But I do remember feeling like he, in the movie, was able to really win with a person and when connecting with that person really help, whether he knew it or not, kind of, no, there wasn't a lot of stress around him when he was with other people in that intentional way, right? I think about what we do in connection with others, and if we can be sort of like almost like a thermostat we in conversation with folks, we can down regulate the stress response
Oh,
that
yeah.
that one might have in their body just through conversation if we're aware of our own
Mhm.
nervous system, right? So I think about that experience with the little boy,
Yeah.
and he just kept his own stress response in a safe space.
Yeah, his thermostat was lower.
Yeah, he did that on purpose whether he knew it or not, and that allowed for eventually
Mhm.
the nervousness of the child or the extra energy or the like want need to protect or this is unfamiliar surroundings. I'm not sure how to be
Mhm.
in this. He was able to then come back and connect.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, that's a really cool visual, like the
Mhm.
thermostat, because part of being present is recognizing where that thermostat is in ourselves at any given moment,
Mhm.
right? And
And being able to shift
shift it.
in that
Right.
thermostat.
Right, which is why we all,
Yeah.
when we talk about softening and breathing into the belly,
Mhm.
that's that process of
Mhm.
pulling that together. There's another scene in there that connects to that I've been wondering what you would think of it. There's a scene where the reporter who's covering him, learning about him, and the reporter's the one that the movie's really about and all of his issues. He says to Fred Rogers' wife, Joanne, says, "How does it feel to be married to a living saint?" And she shuts that down in a second and she says, "I really don't care for that term because to call him a saint implies that nobody else
Mhm.
can get to where he is." She says, "He's got a temper. He's a flawed man. This is a practice. He gets up every day," and she goes through the whole list of things that he does. He swims laps. He reads scripture. He prays for people by name. He has this whole thing. She said, "It's a practice for him to do this." Those 2 things, that whole saint question, because a lot of people look at him as like, "Whoa, this anomaly, right? This miraculous person." And yet we come in here every week talking about how we can all access what this looks like for us,
Mhm.
right? So I wanted to know what comes up for you when I mention that scene and those
Mhm.
things.
Yeah. I talk to my clients about this quite a bit. Life is a practice, and
Mm,
depending on what we want to experience in our life, we do have to practice certain practices, right?
mhm.
So clearly, on some level, connection was really important for him, and being in the space with people as they are, as fully themselves was really important to him.
Mhm.
So on some level, he knew he had to do the things, I guess, behind the scenes
Right.
in order to be able to have part of his life in connection
Mhm.
in a way that he wanted to experience.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes when we put labels on people, well, all times when we put labels on people, it does create disconnection,
Right.
right? Just to your point of, okay, if he's just naturally that way, then that's for him, and
Mhm.
I'm naturally this way, and this is for me,
Mhm.
right? But and wouldn't be able to get to his level of ability and connection, right? Like,
No.
anytime we do that, we compare ourselves that way, or we've got something that keeps us out of not touch, but, where we just wouldn't be able to experience that,
Yeah.
right? Then we're limiting ourselves, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think that he's a human being,
Mhm.
and we're all human beings,
Mhm.
and with particular practices, we can have whatever experiences that we want
Right.
to have
Which
around
will be unique
connection.
which will be unique to us
Right.
in what they look like. So
Mhm.
we don't have to measure ourselves on that scale by how well Mr. Rogers did, as opposed to how well we did. It's a false comparison.
Or we need to be like
Right.
Mr. Rogers to actually be present or
Right.
connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Oh, man. Yeah, because that's the interesting thing. A movie like that, and maybe that's one of the potential pitfalls. In a movie like that, it's obviously a movie about somebody that is really admired, right? And really was throughout his life and was really influential around some things that really right now in these last few years we talked about, some really good reminders,
Mhm.
you know. And yet what movies can sometimes do is set up a person as, we'd all be much better if we were like just like that.
Mhm.
It seems like what you're suggesting, at least the way I'm receiving it, is that was Fred Rogers. That's how that looked for him. He probably wouldn't expect, I don't think, us to want to emulate him. I think he would say back, "Who are you, and how do you connect?
Mm.
How does it come forward for you?" That can be kind of an interesting thing because we're not saying that on this show that everybody needs to be exactly the same.
No, that would be quite boring, I think,
Yeah.
right? Like, we would be like robots or something probably because
Mhm.
we have a different, um, nervous system than other people. We
Mhm.
have our own unique nervous system we're walking
Each of
around with.
us.
Yeah, each one of us, yeah. And it's filled with all of our life experiences, plus certainly maybe some, mechanisms around, DNA in terms of our own, generational experiences in our family. And we maneuver through our life with our own unique set of luggage.
Mm.
And working with that in the most present way we can is going to look different from person to person to person.
Mhm.
And as we give space for us to be able to do that, we're going to be less stressed out in general and able to then connect in ways that are impossible to do when we're stressed out.
Yeah, and I what comes up for me with that is my own experience of being able to connect in situations that once upon a time I didn't think you could connect in. Disagreement,
Mm,
you know, to be connected with somebody and be disagreeing about something or not have something get resolved. You know,
sure.
I used to be a real fixer, like, "No, we gotta address this and fix it."
Mhm.
And, no, not as much.
It's kind of stressful to have to fix everything or get everything off my plate right now. It's a
Mhm.
little stressful to do that because it's not really always, most of the time, it's not even possible.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and and certainly when we try to fix things too quickly because we just are uncomfortable with it, right? Well, then did we really even fix it or did we cause another problem?
Right,
I don't know.
right. And is that even really what the problem is, right? It's something deeper, and what you said triggered up that idea of that discomfort that we seem to want to get past, want to solve. Now, I can only really speak for myself, but I mean, certainly Mr. Rogers felt discomfort. There's scenes in the movie where he talks about it. It's about the responses and the practice of how we connect in the midst of all that. And it can be around things that we wouldn't normally, because I think sometimes the idea of connection is like, "Oh,
Oh,
here's kumbaya.
yes. Mhm.
Here's
It's very still and quiet
very
and
still,
calm.
quiet, calm."
Yeah. Mhm.
And it's not always that way.
No, and that would be boring if it's always that way.
It would.
Too, right? Like, sometimes that feels really great, but if we were really experiencing that day in and day out, that we'd want a little bit more play and probably a little more fun and maybe a little humor.
Oh, yeah.
We'd want a little bit more energy.
Yeah, connecting in play is a huge one. We've
Mhm,
talked about it before,
mhm,
connecting around humor, even connecting around things you care really passionately about, a cause or
mhm.
whatever, that type of thing. Those things are always there, and then it does blow my mind sometimes that I can feel connected with somebody even when if there might be a conflict or might be a difference of opinion and nothing needs to be solved.
Yes. We love to solve things.
Mhm.
It makes us feel really good about ourselves.
Mhm.
Sort of like part of the ego. We wanna feel valued, we wanna feel, like we can do things.
Mhm.
And so we often will make up problems to solve
Oh, man.
or we'll rush to solve them,
Right.
so that we can have a sense of feeling good. We right? And we can feel good other ways too. We just have been conditioned over our lifetime that this is, I guess, one of the ways that's easily available. So let's just keep making up problems,
Mhm. Mhm.
looking for problems.
It's as if the messaging is that's how you know you're living, if you're addressing those problems or if you're fixing something or solving something.
Or that's how you feel important
Mm,
or valued.
yeah, or like with a sense of place, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah. Have a
Yeah,
role. You have a role.
yeah,
Yeah.
and, have you found that sometimes, when people are really engaging in this practice that finding that space of the lack of the need to do that is disquieting? Or do people, when they really connect with that from a place of presence, do they just inevitably go, okay, I like that?
Mhm.
Have you ever seen that?
Again, everybody has a different nervous system,
Of course. Right.
right?
Right.
And
Okay.
so certainly for some folks that feeling of what you just described sort of it has a particular meaning and a
Mhm.
particular feeling for them. And I have heard from other people that yeah, like in this sort of like learning stage. Okay, so here we are. We're learning about this presence thing. I'm practicing this presence thing. And okay, so I'm not really making up all kinds of problems and feeling like I've got to solve anything or everything. And I'm a little bored. I'm like, tapping my fingers like, okay, what's coming next? What's coming next? But that's the nervous system not quite ready
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
because so much of life up until this time has been you got to go, go, go. You got to make things happen. You've got to
Yeah.
solve for everything. That's
Yeah.
what their nervous system has gotten accustomed to.
Yeah. And when you start recognizing that you can choose to not do that,
Mhm.
I think it does take time for the nervous system
Mhm.
and everybody to catch up or to adjust.
Mhm.
And what comes to mind for me when you say that is a story that when I first started working with my personal trainer, he pointed out to me, he said, we're going to do 2 sets of every one of these things. We're going to put another set of something else in between because I want you to experience what happens between the first set of exercises that are brand new and the second time you do it. And the second time I would do these sets of exercises that were really unwieldy at first, the second time was easier. And he asked me, what do you think that means? I said, well, it means my body's taking that information from the first time, processing it around, remembering it, and it's helping me do it. And the more I practice it, the easier these are going to get. And of course, that's what's happened over time.
Mhm.
You know, it kind of feels like the same thing that,
Mm.
but at first it's so unwieldy, like I can't keep my balance. And,
Yeah.
how do I do all that? But, it was one of the things that first taught me that my body is my ally. There's a lot of knowledge in it. There's a lot of awareness in it. There's a lot of skill in it. It's not just this encasing for my brain and my voice box.
It's what keeps your head at a
Is at
particular
a particular level.
place.
Right. It helps me see over most crowds,
Right.
Yeah. So that's what comes up for me with
Mhm.
that. And of course, you're right. It's different for each of us.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
that's part of so there's the commonality of access in the softening in the belly, but because we're all different people, that's gonna do different things.
And maybe not drastically different things,
Mm,
but if we've got a nervous system that has experienced quite a bit of chronic fight or flight, for example, compared to, we don't like to compare, but if we're going to compare to somebody who has a nervous system who hasn't experienced
mm,
certain experiences growing up around a lot of chronic fight or flight, those experiences then of getting into the body or softening are gonna be experienced differently,
mm,
right? And not that one's good or bad, or it doesn't mean that one's more effective and not the other one's not effective. It's not about any quality of it's not about that.
mhm.
It's that they're just the perspective of the experience is going to be different in the body.
Yeah.
So that's the part of, like, when we talk about presencing and softening, and sometimes we do talk about how it feels sort of we get away from the thoughts and it feels maybe a particular way of calming or relaxing.
Mhm.
And for someone else whose body is chronically they may not be able to feel that after just a practice or 2.
Sure, sure. Yeah, it could take a while.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Depending on a number of different
Sh
factors that
Certainly.
yeah. And so, I know it's one of the reasons why we like to keep doing this show because it's just an entry point, for people and just an encouragement that everybody goes at different paces. And sometimes some of these things take a little while to unlock and to be discovered,
Mhm.
and what's, what's, what's been so profound about it for me though, is just even the increments where I go, oh, wow, that's so new and so different to anything I'd experienced before that it made a lot of other things possible because I could see
Mhm.
a little bit of that. It's interesting.
Yep. Yes, and so then if we go right back up to the head around that,
Right.
and we think, "Oh, That was amazing. I want more of that, right? We want to be careful too to not try to put pressure on ourselves to
Right.
make that happen again the
Uh-huh.
next time,
Right.
right? So this whole practice is very different than how we typically might think our way through practices.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because we're laughing in part because I had this experience. I really wanted to run with that particular football
Mhm.
when I first there was such immense for me the opening up of these things, as I recall, at least for me, happened pretty rapidly in a couple of fronts, and I just wanted more of that, and I wanted to run with it. And I think I've mentioned on here before that when that didn't happen for a little while, when despite all this, I've had those experiences, I know more. Why am I still having trouble with this? You said to me, well, don't make don't make presencing a problem. You
We
know?
don't wanna have some kind of, like, this is not an outcome-based.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a presence based, right? Outcomes
It's a
arrive.
reality-based. It's a reality-based. Whatever's
Yeah.
going to show up is going to show up.
Mhm.
And however uncomfortable that is,
Yeah.
as we open up space for it and as we welcome it and accept
Mhm.
it, going back to Fred Rogers, sort of this sense of feeling like he was very accepting of of folks,
Yes.
right? And so as we accept whatever comes up internally for us as reality, we don't have to fix or change or solve for. We just get to partner with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that just even sounds simpler, you know, and, for me, it's been such a better place to start from
Mhm.
when I'm there
Mhm.
because it uncomplicates everything else. So, I'm fascinated by, you were talking about labels earlier,
Mhm.
and then also to put that side by side with what you said about, we're all of these individual people and this looks
Mhm.
different. It seems like a really important point to make that we're not saying that everybody should end up you know, feeling the same, looking the same, saying the same things, having the same connective experiences, that everybody's the same. And then I can see where labels can be, even in the Mr. Rogers movie, he says, when we tell a little kid, well, when you're older, you will understand, or when you're older, this, as he says, when you tell a kid that, you suddenly have put them in a spot where they're like, I'm not good enough by just exactly as I am.
Mhm.
Boy, how would things be?
Mhm.
It's just a wondering if we understood everybody as these individual nervous systems, as you put it, um, with that recognition that everybody is accepted as they are, how they are, and you connect to them.
Mhm.
Boy, I wonder what that would be like if more people experienced that or saw things that way.
Mhm.
You ever wonder that?
Yeah, we can only imagine,
Yeah.
right? Um, it might it would totally feel very different.
Mhm.
In theory, it sounds like it would be wonderful,
Mhm.
right? Because we'd be able to connect. We'd be able to get rid of all of those things that we do to protect ourselves that keep us disconnected.
Yeah.
So that part sounds great,
Yeah.
right? But yeah.
I wonder what areas of disagreement would disappear,
Mhm.
or separation because of disagreement, I should say,
Mhm.
right? Or disconnect because of disagreement.
What comes to mind for me is, we always I've talked to so many people about so many different things, but so many times it comes back to, well, I wouldn't have said it that way. I wouldn't have done it that way. Like, that's where we land.
Mhm.
That part would be gone.
That's true.
I would never have to hear that again.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
Mhm.
Yeah, because if playing that out, how often are I've done this. If you don't do something the way other people normally, quote unquote, do, or other people want you to do, I can find myself in situations and have where I feel like I'm just one down from everybody,
Mhm.
you know, and that's not a fun place to be. It's a story,
Mhm.
but yeah, I just wonder about that because and maybe that's part of the appeal of that film is that you kind of get that wonder, wow, what if more of us the way they're pitching is, what if more of us were like
Sure.
Mr. Rogers?
Mhm.
But if we take that out, saying we don't need to be like Mr. Rogers, what if we all found our own versions of that in ourselves? What would that be like?
Mhm.
And it sounds like an impossible dream to think about, but if we play the tape out of this logically,
Mhm.
it's kind of a fun question to ask,
Mhm. Mhm.
because then we start thinking about what might be possible.
Well, and maybe we can be thinking and talking about that, the possibilities next week.
Wow, look at that skillful
know.
transition
I don't
into
know.
the end of the show. Well done.
I'm learning.
That was great.
Thank
That was
you.
great. Yeah, that was great. Because we are at the end of our time, believe it or not.
Getting
Thanks.
close. Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. If you haven't seen that movie,
Yeah.
give yourself a treat. And if you have seen it, watch it again, and see how it lands on you post COVID. If you saw it before COVID,
Mhm.
be interesting to see
It
that.
would be. It would
Yeah,
be.
and if any of you have thoughts on that, please reach out to us at our Facebook group, Breaking Up with RBS. We'd love to hear what you have to say about that and talk a little bit about it. And of course, if you have not yet subscribed to the podcast, please do so, or join us live next week,
Mhm.
where we'll be back to talk about more ways in which we can break up with our BS, debunk our junk. Until then, I am JDK Winnikin.
And I am Tawny Santabria.
Thanks so much for joining us. We will see you next week.
Next week.
How you all feel tonight?
Stop. I can't take it anymore.
Oh, I do the live ones too. Yes, I know. I saw your act in the theater. You're really quite good.
Quite a certain harmful habit.
Stop it now. I need it.